So as you can expect, there's lots of talks about pros and cons of fresh servers. With Wrath of the Lich King not that far away now in the grand scheme of things, the fact that we've had fresh servers announced so soon is quite impressive on Blizzard's part, and we've spoke about this at length on stream. So I've got 4 buckets of things that I'd like to talk about. We've got pros, we've got cons, we've got hopes and concerns, and then we've got what we've called funky stuff. Actually, we called it something else, but we're going to go with funky stuff for the kids. Now, a lot of these points were all brought up on stream and everybody had their say. So these are not my hopes, concerns, pros, cons, and funky stuff. This is the community's. But first, just a quick word from our sponsor. Cyberpower UK have award-winning PCs. You can have PCs expertly built by game. So if your primary game, like me, is World of Warcraft, you simply click World of Warcraft. It already knows what the system requirements are, and then you can configure your new PC. They provide complete custom-built PCs, gaming laptops, and even complete gaming PC bundles, which, as you can see, they come with not only the PC, but monitor, headset, mouse, keyboard, and even mouse mat. Even though you may notice that it's Cyberpower UK, they do also deliver internationally. So I want to buy a PC from them. What do? I personally would use the buy game tool. I would pick World of Warcraft and then I would configure my PC. They've got the Warcraft Infinity Game PC, which is the one that I personally use, or you've got the Warcraft Ryzen gaming PC. So for this, let's use the one that I use and look at the customization tool. With your new PC, you can get discounts on all top new games. They do complete bundles that you can add on as well, but it really is simple to add any upgrades or any additions that you want. You just literally scroll down until you reach the bottom, adding on or taking off anything that you want. So if you want to put in some more RGB lights like I've got in mine, which do come remote control, so you can change the color of them to match your setup, you could do that. Whilst the Intel i5-12400F is included in the price, maybe you want something with a bit more power behind it, so you might choose to upgrade to potentially the i7. You can see clearly exactly how much that's going to add on to the total price. Or if you play WoW Classic, where this is a build for WoW Shadowlands, you might think you don't need the power, so you could actually get some money off the price and drop down to an i3. But once you've selected absolutely everything you want and you reach the bottom of the page, you'll notice you get 5 years labour, 2 years parts as a standard warranty, which is really, really good. When you're finished, add it to the cart, and if you don't want to pay the £828 that this particular setup would cost all in one go, they do actually have finance as well available. They've always got a sales team on hand that you can talk to if you're not sure about any of it, and I'll put all of their socials in the description below, including a Discord server. So you can join the Discord server, go in and ask some questions about some of these builds. But ultimately, great company. Thank you, Cyberpower, for sponsoring this video. And now let's move on. But for pros, we're looking at the obvious things, like the fact that the market gets reset completely. And we're talking about the economy here. There is no one sat on multiple gold caps. And what someone said, which I really liked, was that fresh car smell feeling. A bit weird to say out loud, but I really liked it when he typed it out. Another pro is that retail and ex-private server players have somewhere to go now where they don't feel so far behind, and that it's pointless even to try, because you can imagine if you are just coming back from retail, you've been playing retail since vanilla, since 2004, but you loved Wrath, you've really got fond memories of Wrath, and you want to experience it again. Would you really want to experience it again when everybody's been doing GDKPs for the last months, years, however long, and are sat on gold caps, and you are so far behind that when you're looking at that economy, it just puts you off? And the same goes with wanting to get these ex-private server players, these guys that only play on Wrath of the Lich King private servers because there is no option. It's the game that they love. It's the expansion that they love. It's the expansion they want to play. Now they've got the expansion put in front of them in a classic capacity where they're happy to pay for it, but they're just not happy with the way the servers are at the moment, being completely skewed from a faction perspective, being completely skewed from an economy perspective. It's just not an advertising place to go. Another minor one. Maybe there's a name that you really like and you really want to try and get that name, but someone created their character 2 years ago and they've got that name and you can't get it. I know that's a minor one, but it's a point that someone made, and I thought it'd make this list. A level playing field is the big one, and the level playing field is the angle that Blizzard are pushing, and it's absolutely right. It's the whole point of everybody feeling like they're on a level playing field. You can come back to Wrath of the Lich King during the pre-patch and be as competitive as those that have been playing Classic since 2019. Some of you would look at this as a con and say, whoa, it's not fair. You've put the effort in and you've been playing since 2019. You should have an edge. But should you really have an edge? You got to look at this in the perspective of, let's say, FIFA. Would you have an edge in FIFA 22 over FIFA 21? Yeah, you played all of FIFA 21 and your ultimate team is absolutely banging. You've got every single player that you want, and it's like player of the year or team of the year or team of the week or whatever. And you've spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds to get that amazing team. But come FIFA 22, none of that means anything. So why should it mean anything with WoW? And then some real quick points, but Orgrimmar, Stormwind, Thunderbluff, all these places are going to feel alive again. All these OG capital cities are going to be flooded with people, which is always great to see. The leveling experience without boosting will be epic. So many people will actually be playing the game as it was intended. So no boosts to begin with. Yes, of course, mages and paladins will be boosting, maybe not that long after launch, because yes, there'll be gold sellers, there'll be people who are boosting for gold. But to begin with, those first couple of months or couple of weeks or however long it is, they are going to be legit and everybody's going to be pulling together to actually get these dungeons done. Which just means dungeons will be easier to find groups for even without random dungeon finder because the world will feel more alive. The fresh atmosphere where people actually work together and they're willing to do things they wouldn't ordinarily choose to go and do on an existing realm. Why would someone go and do Zul'Farrak at level 44 when they can pay for a boost? Why would they choose to go and do some old TBC heroics or dungeons for reputation when they've already got it done, the vast majority of them? But when there's achievements, these things are important. On a fresh realm, people will be going and doing crazy things that you're like not expecting. You know, going and doing AQ rep runs, going and doing Molten Core rep runs. Of course, that will happen on the old existing servers as well, but it will probably be a lot more difficult to pull those players together to go and do those sort of things because there's just less players that actually need it. And the fact that there will be a period of time where there's not boosts, and who knows, maybe they do go along the Season of Mastery line and actually restrict boosts altogether on these fresh realms. I'd find that extremely difficult for them to do, especially if we're only talking fresh realms. They would have to do it for all of them or none of them at all. Another positive is getting heirlooms. Getting heirlooms and leveling alts is extremely fun. But when you've already got all your characters at level 70 on the existing realms, a big portion of that fun's lost. So the fact that you've got all alts available for you to go and level because you've got no other characters, you can have some real fun getting your two-handed heirloom weapon enchanted with a big enchant and then going around and smashing level ones. It really just adds to keeping that low-level content alive for as long as physically possible, which is something that will be completely lost on the old existing realms. That on top of the fact that there's a full profession reset, meaning people also have to go back to places like Karazhan to get recipes like Mongoose, or go to ZA to go and get Executioner, further adding to keeping old content alive. And people will take these things seriously. At the moment on an old realm, why would you bother? You'll be able to find someone easily that can do those enchants. But with the fact that heirlooms are limited to the amount of enchants that they can have, as in the level of enchant, those old world enchants are going to be absolutely worth going back and actually getting. Whereas on an existing realm, there's not that much point of going back. You could go back if you're, about collecting all of the enchants and stuff, but you'll be able to find someone on your realm that's got it because they've been playing since 2019. On here, no such luck. You're probably going to have to get a group together and go and be the first group to get it maybe, or the second group or whatever. But either way, there's not going to be that many people with the big enchants that you're going to want for your heirlooms. So it again keeps the realm alive. Gathering professions become worthwhile as bots haven't saturated everything yet, or the market has been hoarded by investors from previous phases. We all know bots will end up saturating the market, but not straight away. All the low-level gear from dungeons or even raids, if you wanted to go in and get some 70 gear to actually assist you get into level 80, all of it becomes far more useful and just far more relevant, where it's not really going to matter on existing realms. Because getting dungeon gear, what's the point? You're just going to get boosted. Now, when you actually get an upgrade in those dungeons, it's going to mean a lot. Another one could be the reduction in the amount of Death Knights we see. We know with no limitation on creating a Death Knight on the existing realms, it could mean we're going to see a lot of them. Whereas when there is that level 55 requirement, you have to get to 55 before you can create a DK on a fresh realm. Which means people can't just create one and play it for a few levels and then disappear, or even play it and get all the way to 80. They've got to be really committed to rolling DK because they've got to get something else to 55 first, which will be interesting. And then on to the cons. So the loss of progress for people on their characters is obviously the biggest con. There are two mindsets here. There's those mindsets where they are attached to their characters the same way, using that FIFA 22 analogy, there'll be people that still play FIFA 21 because they don't want to let their old Ultimate Team go. I, for one, am not really bothered. It's a game that I really enjoy playing, and I would choose 3 months of fresh hype where everybody's absolutely loving it and having a really good time. And even if it then slowly declined over the coming months, those 3 months was absolutely worth it. But then there are others that are attached to their character. They've invested lots of time, lots of gold. They've got glaives, they've got Scarab Lord, they've got Grand Marshal, all these things that you only really planned on obtaining once. You've got them once, you're never bothered about being able to do it again, and you really don't want to lose those titles or those mounts or whatever you've got. So it's totally understandable that a massive con for those people will be the loss of everything that they've earned over the last few years. Another big con is actually that there's no reason to play WoW until the pre-patch. And I'm coming from an angle of someone who's going fresh. So if you're going fresh, you at the moment have got no reason to play WoW. It's a really weird place to be in. Like me. You know, I love making content. I love talking to you guys. I love streaming. But I've not really got that much reason to log on. I'm going fresh. Our guild's going fresh. What's the point? So I see this as a really big con to the fresh server hype, because a lot of people at the moment are either stuck in limbo or just flat out don't want to play, which can lead to some really bad things along the line. We are talking cons and we're being as fair as possible. But someone could quite easily fall in love with a different game during the break between stopping playing now and planning on coming back for the pre-patch where they're going to go fresh. They could get stuck into something like Star Wars The Old Republic or Elder Scrolls Online or numerous other MMOs where they then just get to a point where they're like, actually, I'm not that bothered about Wrath anymore. I do see that as a con. Queues are another big one. There could be queues and we don't even know. At the moment, you could be sat safely on a realm that you know is sat at a medium to high population where you just aren't going to suffer from queues. Or you could be on Firemore where you know you're guaranteed queues and you're thinking, well, I'll go fresh, there won't be any queues there. And you could end up in an even longer queue if the hype for the servers is so big and the amount of servers that are provided are too small. Which also then comes down to the fact that depending on how many servers they make, PvP might be hugely unbalanced. We know that there's a very big possibility that Alliance is going to get stacked on servers due to every man for theirself, or Will to Survive, or whatever it's called now. So on these PvP servers, we could still end up with this nice, shiny, fresh new server that's just dominated by Alliance. And then we could get a PvE server that's absolutely dominated by Horde. Do we really want to be in that position again? Because if things like this happen, maybe the server's got a potential to die off quicker than an existing established realm, forcing you to pay to transfer, or a massive loss in time to re-roll back to your original server. And rapidly decreasing player base after the first month is going to be a big one. I myself have witnessed people saying, oh yeah, I'm going to go on fresh for a couple of weeks just to, check it out, but then, I'm going to go back to my main ready for when Wrath launches. So we're going to have these massively inflated numbers of people on these fresh servers to begin with, and then they all just fall off. So the massively inflated numbers at the start where everyone's just toying around with it could cause queues, which puts people off who would actually be willing to sort of go the distance and stay on that server. So it's the uncertainty around the first few weeks of it. And when we're only going to get 2 to 4 weeks, probably 4, hopefully, weeks of pre-patch, it could have quite a negative effect on that server. And another big one is that people are forced to choose between guilds moving to fresh and their current stability. So if you're in an established guild at the moment where you're clearing content, but you really like the idea of fresh, so you potentially now could choose to go fresh and damage your guild because you've got that fear of missing out of this big fresh opportunity, and it could tear guilds up on current servers, either forcing some of those people to quit because they don't want to be anywhere else other than the guild that they're playing in, and they don't want to go fresh. So leading on from that, it potentially splits players off of medium population servers, which could lead to even more medium population servers dying. So if all these people on the medium pop servers are like, oh, do you know what, I'll sack this off, I'm going to go and play fresh, it's going to be a much better experience, those servers could die. So yes, we've got these nice new fresh servers, but then we've also got other servers dying because of them, which is going to lead to more server shutdowns, more people quitting those servers because they don't want to go fresh. They're attached to their character and all their gear. So that could be a potential loss of a subscriber, for Blizzard themselves. There's a lot of cons to consider, really, even though I'm pro-fresh. Then to fly through some more of these, it could die after 90 days, but also could get busier. It may be a smaller community at 80, because people give up after having to manually level again instead of actually just doing the 70 to 80 on their existing realm. You can't make a DK on day one. Some people might see this as a negative, because if you want to play a DK and you're coming back to Wrath to play a DK, are you going to choose a fresh realm where you've got to do 1 to 55, or are you going to go on an existing realm where you can straight away start a DK? So the restriction there could be seen as a negative from the perspective of someone who wants a DK. The chances of Blizzard giving up on Fresh is also higher, just like Season of Mastery. And what we mean by this is you could get to a point where you start seeing diminishing populations on these servers, and all of a sudden they're like, do you know what? It's been 92 days, let's open transfers. And that's what we absolutely don't want. Fresh is meant to be fresh, and they have tried putting our mind at ease with blue posts, and there's even been a second blue post in the last 24 hours since I put a video out about an update, just reiterating the fact that 90 days doesn't mean 90 days. So they may not open transfers on these servers ever. It's totally going to come down to the population, how healthy it all looks, and if it's sustainable. And of course, when it comes to cons, lots of titles that were available pre-Wrath of the Lich King. There'll be certain things that you just aren't going to be able to get in Wrath of the Lich King that you can have on Classic. And what this also leads to is if they do allow transfers, people being able to move onto these fresh servers where things have been unobtainable for so long, all of a sudden become obtainable to those that obtained it on other servers. It's just not right. You should never expect to see, without changes, a Scarab Lord or a Grand Marshal or anything like that on a fresh Wrath server, because they're not obtainable, and we understand they're not obtainable, so to see people moving over with them to these fresh realms is a massive, massive downer. And another one is a big threat to the community itself. And you may not know, but when it comes to Wrath of the Lich King private servers like Warmane, they are notoriously toxic. The communities are awful, like they really are. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's some nice people that play on Warmane, and I'm sure some of you are those people. But in general, they aren't like Classic. They're not as understanding. They are very toxic. I ain't got another word. So most of those will probably flock to fresh servers, which actually could all of a sudden make it not feel quite as Classic is. I don't particularly see it as a con because everybody on this fresh server is in the same boat, but there could potentially be cases where old items that are no longer obtainable from the original Nax are useful, such as the tier 3 Resto Druid set, which gives like an additional revitalize, which we actually spoke about on a podcast recently, actually. Quick plug of the podcast. People do see it as a con because of how serious competing on Warcraft logs is nowadays. So it could be seen as a con if some of these items are completely unobtainable and people have already got them on existing realms. I don't really see it as a con. I see that as a trade-off. You know, as in I understand that if I'm going on a fresh realm, there's certain things I'm just not going to be able to get. And then for some hopes and concerns. So if you have got a Dark Portal Pass, does it count for fresh servers? We know it's just a minuscule amount of gold from getting a free mount, but is it really fresh if you're getting anything free? Another one would be when they open transfers, if they open transfers. Should there be a limitation on this where only bind-on pickup items can be moved and let's say a 1,000 gold limit? This means they couldn't buy loads of stuff from an auction house and move them over to sell. We would put this down as a hope rather than a concern, but it does really fall in both camps. Whilst there shouldn't be transfers onto fresh realms, there also shouldn't really be transfers off of fresh realms, because we know the fresh realm is going to have a very different economy to everywhere else, and you could potentially buy lots of things really cheap to move to a different realm and really cash in. Now, whilst that happens all the time, going from high pop to low pop realms, I think there will be a bigger difference between fresh and existing when it comes to market value on items. And as a hope, it would be really good for Blizzard to use this chance to force faction balance on PvP servers, blocking the majority faction from making new characters. So if you was to go to a maximum of, let's say, 60-40 or as close to it as possible, you can no longer create characters on the 60% faction. We know that does cause difficulty if your friend comes and wants to start playing, but it is a chance for him to at least manage factions and try something different. And if they really want to allow transfers from these servers or to these servers, they should only really allow them between fresh servers. We know there's going to be more than one. So let's say there was only 2. You can move between fresh servers. You can't move anywhere else. That would keep it as fair as possible. This is a big hope, boys. This is a big hope. People have said that random dungeon finder should be in fresh. I totally agree, and it's really hard for me to even come up with a negative reason why it shouldn't. The only thing I can come up with is the fact that they should not differentiate between the servers. It's not fresh, let's toy around with things, versus old, we'll leave it all the same. So I do get the fact that no, they should all be the same. It's either Dungeon Finder in all or Dungeon Finder in none. But it still is a nice thing for someone like me who really likes random Dungeon Finder to think of, being the fact that Blizzard could just put it in, just for us, just for the fresh re-rollers, just help us while we're leveling. Another hope someone said was about bringing GMs back just on these servers, so it is heavily policed from the word go, so they could really have a new start at keeping these servers balanced. But again, I totally understand. There's nothing special about these fresh servers over the servers that you've been paying to play on for the last 3 to 4 years, so no, they shouldn't really get special treatment, but still would be nice. Now, funky stuff. 2 real funky points. I like the word funky, but 2 really funky points. When it comes to getting items that are no longer obtainable, it would be a chance for them to make things slightly different. Again, I want to stay completely neutral, and I want to come at it from a place where we respect everybody who's staying on existing realms, and we respect everybody that's going on fresh realms. We know the ZA bear, so the Armani War Bear, would not be available. We're never going to see one unless they open transfers and people bring them over. The same way we'll never see a Scarab Lord, or the mount that goes along with Scarab Lord. So could they actually, just for the fresh servers, add events during the life cycle of Wrath of the Lich King, for example, a 3-month AQ event to be able to get Scarab Lord, or even a version of Zola Man where it's tuned to level 80, just for a small period of time, maybe just between tier 7 and 8, or between tier 9 and 10, just to fill a gap where you can obtain those mounts or those titles on those servers. And I know you're like, no, mate. No, that's ridiculous. It's crazy talk. It is crazy talk from Blizzard, but it does also make sense. It would be good. It would be fun. It would attract people even to play on those servers. Even if they was on, if you, John, I'm talking to you, John. If your name's John, comment below saying, I'm John, thanks for talking to me. If you're playing on Firemore and you heard there's going to be a tuned 80 version of ZA, you'd probably start a character and slowly level one up, on a fresh realm just to experience it. So whilst I know all the servers need to be aligned, you can't have special stuff on fresh servers versus existing servers, but at the same time, we said it's funky stuff. It's just a nice thought, and that's where I want to leave the video. So be sure to like and subscribe. Roll the outro. There's lots of ways you can support the channel to keep me here putting out World of Warcraft content and covering all future MMOs. Consider joining the channel as a member. You get access to emotes. Everyone will know you're a member when you comment on future videos because you get a nice icon next to your name. And you get access to members-only videos, which I'll be putting a lot of on the channel throughout the year. Additionally, there's a Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.